In 1982, in a quiet Malaysian town in the state of Perak, a small family-run print shop named Kedai Percetakan Lianhua released what appeared to be a simple product, a hand-painted lunar calendar. It featured 12 months, each represented by a painted girl embodying the spirit of her respective Chinese zodiac sign. Limited to only 1,000 copies, the calendars were distributed to local markets, temples, and small businesses, mostly to Hokkien-speaking Chinese families living in the area. No one expected that this delicate, artistically crafted calendar would soon be whispered about in hushed voices, linked to a string of chilling disappearances, and all of it traced back to something that was never supposed to be there in the first place: the page for the 7th lunar month, Ghost Month. Among Chinese communities, especially those of Hokkien descent, the 7th month of the lunar calendar is known as Hungry Ghost Month. It is believed that during this time, the gates of the underworld open, allowing spirits to roam freely in the world of the living. Families burn incense and joss paper, offer food, and avoid risky behaviors. Superstitions become strict laws. No whistling at night, no swimming, no weddings, no photo taking at festivals. Mirrors are covered, lanterns stay lit. But most important of all, nothing sacred should be tampered with. The original blueprint for the calendar did not include a painting for Ghost Month. It was left intentionally blank, honoring the taboo of creating visual representations of spirits during that time. But somehow, a painting was added, and that's when everything started to go wrong. People began to notice something strange about that particular page. The girl looked off. Her eyes were darker than the others, with no pupils. Her hands were folded in a way that resembled mourning, not grace. And most disturbing of all, beneath her delicate features, beneath her ghost-white skin, was an eerie background that resembled a funeral sketch used in Hokkien death rituals. Some said it wasn't a painting at all, but a traced copy from an ancient food talisman meant to trap a wandering soul. But once it had been printed, she was no longer trapped. She didn't have a name. Not in the design files, not in the print shop records, not even in the memory of the artist who painted her. According to the son of the original calendar illustrator, now in his late 60s, the 7th painting wasn't part of his father's portfolio at all. When interviewed years later, he recalled his father falling ill during the final stages of the project. The old man had started to act strangely, muttering in Hokkien to himself late at night. He would often be seen staring into a blank canvas, his brush hovering but never touching, as if afraid to begin. Then, one morning, he handed the finished calendar over to the printers and locked himself in his room. He never painted again. What disturbed the son most was that the 7th painting didn't match his father's usual style. The brushwork was tighter. The background, always soft and floral in the other pages, was layered with patterns resembling joss paper used in traditional funerals. And the girl's posture? Stiff, unnatural, like she was being posed by something unseen. Several weeks later, the first rumors surfaced. A grocery shop owner who hung the calendar in her back office failed to show up one morning. When relatives broke in, they found her curled up in bed, eyes open in terror, mouth frozen in a silent scream. A pile of black ash sat beside her pillow. It was identified as the remnants of a food talisman, the kind often burned to send offerings to the dead. Authorities chalked it up to sudden cardiac arrest. But a second case came, then a third. In every scene, the calendar hung nearby, always turned to the same page. A mirror somewhere in the room was cracked, and the date of death matched the exact lunar day printed under the ghost girl's image. What's most unsettling is what the artist's journal revealed. In the final page before he stopped writing, he scribbled one cryptic line in shaky Hokkien. She wasn't drawn. She was remembered. What did that mean? Had the girl already existed somewhere in the shadows of the past? Had the artist seen her before? Or worse, had she asked to be seen? Whatever the truth, one thing became increasingly clear. She wasn't a symbol of Ghost Month. She was the ghost. The print shop didn't just create calendars. For decades, Kadai Perchetakan Lianhua had served the local Chinese community by producing ceremonial prints, wedding banners, ancestral tablets, prayer scrolls, and most notably, Jari Lukisan Arwa, memorial sketches used during traditional Hokkien funerals. These portraits, often drawn in monochrome ink, were stylized depictions of the deceased, created not to preserve memory, but to give the spirit something to attach to, something to rest in. Once the funeral rites were complete, the sketches were either burned or buried, to sever the spirit's tether to the world of the living. But not all of them made it to the fire. In the attic of the shop, sealed inside a decaying wooden chest bound with red twine, there existed a forbidden collection. Sketches that had been rejected by the families, either because they were too frightening, too distorted, or simply wrong. Drawings where the eyes looked too alive, where the mouths were smiling just a little too much, where the bodies were shaped like those of the dead, but the faces didn't match the names. The son of the shop owner later confessed in a trembling voice during a private interview, "We were supposed to destroy them, but my father kept some. He said some of them weren't done with us yet." Among these sketches, folded and wrapped in aging cloth, was one that stood out. It was labeled only with 3 Hokkien characters: Sio Xia Gua, the little ghost girl. No name, no date of death, no family. Just a face, eerily identical to the girl in the Ghost Month painting. Her hair was parted in the same way, her eyes were dark voids, and the same strange symbol, a half-burned talisman, was scrawled behind her shoulder, almost like a signature. The paper, aged and yellowed, had one disturbing flaw. It was not inked on funeral parchment. It was drawn on calendar stock, thicker, coated, and ready for mass printing. It was as if the drawing was never meant to be destroyed. It was meant to be copied. When the calendar went to press, the old print shop machine jammed only once, on the 7th sheet. A worker remembered peeling back the ink tray to find a dark substance pooled underneath the rollers. It wasn't ink. It smelled like burnt hair and wet soil. They replaced the rollers and continued the run. No one questioned it. Until the deaths began. And now looking back, the pattern is undeniable. She wasn't inserted into the calendar. She was waiting inside it. The funeral sketch that should have been burned had found its way into mass production. And now she had a page in every home. The first death was quiet. Madame Tan, 64, a widowed grocery store owner in the outskirts of Taiping, was known for her discipline. Every morning before opening shop, she'd sweep the front steps, boil tea, and change the calendar page with careful hands, a ritual as consistent as the sun. It was her nephew who found her. She hadn't opened the store in 2 days. The neighbors noticed the metal shutter still down on the 3rd morning and called her family. When they finally pried open the front gate, they found the teapot still warm on the stove, untouched, and the calendar flipped to to the 7th lunar month. Madame Tan was in her bed, eyes open, mouth gaping in horror, like she had died mid-scream. There was no sign of forced entry, no bruising, no struggle. Just one thing out of place: a pile of blackened ash on the floor beside her pillow, in the vague shape of a paper charm. The calendar hung beside her vanity mirror. The mirror was cracked diagonally from corner to corner, and in its fractured reflection, the ghost girl's eyes seemed to follow you. The authorities ruled it natural causes. Age, heart attack, nothing unusual. But a week later, it happened again. This time, a young student, 17 years old. His parents said he hadn't slept for 3 nights. He kept waking up screaming, telling them a girl was standing behind him in the mirror. He even tore the calendar down and tried to burn it, but the 7th page wouldn't catch fire. It only curled at the edges like it had been burned once before. On the 7th night of the 7th lunar month, his mother found him collapsed by the mirror, his face twisted, eyes bloodshot. He had written something on the wall in marker, over and over again. "She's not in the calendar anymore." Word spread slowly, whispers in coffee shops, quiet conversations during temple visits. Some believed it was just coincidence. Others started flipping past the 7th month altogether. Then came the blogger. A university student obsessed with urban legends heard about the rumors and went looking for the calendar. He found a copy, still intact, at a thrift store in Ipoh. He wrote a blog post titled "The Girl in the Calendar, Myth or Murder," and uploaded high-res scans of all 12 pages. By morning, the post was taken down. His account was deleted, and his roommate reported him missing. In his dorm, only 2 things were found: a cracked hand mirror on the desk, and a calendar open to the 7th page, though it was blank. The image of the ghost girl was gone. It was then people began to wonder, how many copies of the calendar are still out there? And if you found one, would you dare to turn to July? No one knew who started it. Some say it began with a monk in Penang who tried to trap the spirit using reflective surfaces. Others claim it was a former mortuary worker who survived an encounter by accident after a broken mirror fell and sliced across his altar table. But soon the pattern was clear. The girl in the calendar wasn't just an image, she was a presence, and she was drawn to mirrors. A local Hokkien priestess, known only as Mak Po, was the first to document what would later be whispered as the mirror ritual. In her diary, discovered after her mysterious disappearance, she wrote, "She cannot cross thresholds. She cannot enter without being seen. But if you look at her through glass, she no longer needs to knock." Mak Po believed the spirit was originally bound inside a funerary talisman, her soul painted onto parchment and sealed with chants. The act of printing her image over and over, especially on calendar paper tied to lunar energy, reawakened her. But mirrors, she warned, acted as doorways. Every reported death had 3 common signs. The calendar was flipped to the 7th month. A paper charm burned completely to ash. A cracked or warped mirror in the room. And sometimes, in the moments before death, the victims described the same chilling detail. "She was smiling at me in the reflection, but I wasn't smiling." The ritual is simple, but deadly. Legend says, If you tear the 7th page from the calendar, while standing in front of a mirror, she will appear behind you, smiling. If you blink, she vanishes. If you speak, she answers. But if you turn around even once, you'll find nothing there. Until you sleep. Then she steps out. Some tried to test the ritual. A group of teens in Johor live-streamed the challenge, tearing the page in front of a full-length mirror at midnight during Ghost Month. The stream went viral for a brief 14 minutes. Comments were pouring in. Is that someone in the reflection? Yo, behind you! Bro, that's not your shadow! Then the stream cut to static. The account was suspended. None of the 3 boys were seen again. Days later, a neighbor reported hearing scratching sounds from the boys' apartment. Police forced the door open. Inside was silence. No blood, no signs of struggle. Only 3 things remained. The mirror, shattered from inside. The calendar, page 7 missing. And on the wall, drawn in ashes, she doesn't care about the date anymore. Only that you turned the page. Ash was always there, neatly piled beside the bodies, scattered across bed sheets, or smeared on mirrors like someone had tried to ward off something too late. Authorities dismissed it as incense residue or remnants of burned joss paper, but the ash told a different story, one that only the spiritual practitioners could read. A Taoist medium from Klang, Master Ko, was the first to examine the ash under ritual light. What he found chilled him. Within the grains of gray dust were traces of crushed cinnabar, a sacred mineral traditionally used to inscribe protective symbols on food talismans. More disturbingly, Ko noticed something no one else had. The ashes aren't from charms burned intentionally, he said. They were consumed by her. According to Ko, the paper talismans found near the victims had not been lit with fire. They had been drained from the inside out. In traditional Hokkien belief, a food talisman must be activated through breath, ink, and fire. The spell is drawn in a single stroke, sealed with the master's breath, then either burned to carry the prayer or pinned above thresholds to guard against spirits. But these talismans, the ones found beside the dead, bore markings that had been warped, melted, or half erased. One in particular, recovered from a victim in Malacca, had a visible pattern, a red ink sigil of protection, but over it was a black smear, shaped like a handprint, and that hand had no lines, no fingerprints, just void. Mok Po once wrote of a spirit that feeds on faith, a being that not repelled by talismans, but attracted to them. Because the more people tried to protect themselves, the more energy they poured into defense, the more they acknowledged her. And that was all she needed: recognition, attention, fear. That was invitation. The ashes became her signature, not a remnant of what protected you, but proof that it had failed. One man survived, barely. He was a spiritual goods shopkeeper who noticed his wards repeatedly falling off the walls every ghost month. On the night he tore the cursed page and stared into his bathroom mirror, he heard something whisper behind him in Hokkien. "That charm won't stop me. You used the wrong name." He passed out. When he woke, every charm in his shop was gone, reduced to ash. Every mirror was cracked, except the one facing his altar. That mirror remained whole. Why? He later said, "She won't walk where the dead already dwell. She's not hunting ghosts. She's hunting those who forget to fear them." From that day on, one truth became clear among believers. If you find ash beside your bed, you didn't stop her. You only delayed her. No name, no birth record, no funeral notice, no ancestral tablet. She was never registered in any temple's death scrolls. No monk had ever chanted her soul across the river. No family had ever offered her incense. She was a spirit without a name, and in traditional Chinese belief, that is the most dangerous kind of all. A nameless ghost has no tether, no place to rest, no one to call her back. She roams, forgotten and unseen, until someone remembers her by mistake. And in the case of the calendar girl, remembering came through ink and print, through color, through beauty, through a hand-painted portrait built on a funeral sketch that never should have survived. Master Ko, after recovering one of the last remaining sketches from the attic of the print shop, took it to an old temple deep in the Cameron Highlands. The temple specialized in spirits that had no family, a forgotten place where monks offered prayers to wandering souls abandoned by time. There, he laid the paper out beneath incense smoke and watched as the lines began to shift. The ink seemed to rise. The girl's smile, once faint, grew broader. Her eyes, empty before, filled with shadow. One monk collapsed mid-chant. Another fled the altar in silence. The abbot, pale and shaken, said only this: "That is not a girl. That is a mouth drawn to look like a face." Old folk tales speak of hungry mouths, vengeful energies that consume identities. When someone dies unjustly and is never named, their soul twists inward, feeding on what should have freed them. Over decades, it doesn't just become angry, it becomes clever. It mimics a child, a woman, a victim. And when someone gives it form through sketch or story or speech, it begins to believe it's real. That's what the calendar did. It gave her a body, a smile, a place to wait, and worst of all, a page to mark her return. But what happens when even the page is torn away? What happens when the image fades, but the belief remains? Master Ko feared this above all. She has no name, so she borrows yours. She has no story, so she waits in yours. She has no death, because no one buried her memory. The calendar girl doesn't want worship. She wants reflection. She wants to be seen. And once you look, she's already looking back. It always started the same way. You'd be brushing your teeth, or passing by a shop window, or glancing into your phone's black screen before it lit up. And for a moment, not long, just a flicker, your reflection moved before you did. A tilt of the head, a blink out of sync, a smile that crept up on the wrong side of your mouth. It wasn't aggressive. It didn't scream. It just waited, like it was checking if you noticed. And if you did, if you paused long enough, turned your head back to the mirror and stared, then it smiled wider. Because now you'd accepted the invitation. A woman in Ipoh was one of the first to document this behavior. She wrote in her journal, "My reflection is tired when I'm not. It frowns when I feel fine. And last night, I saw her standing behind me in the glass. Not in the room, only the glass. She covered every mirror in her home, but the calendar girl wasn't bound to just silver-backed glass anymore. She had evolved. TV screens, darkened windows, black phone displays before they lit up. Even the back of a spoon left on the altar. Wherever a reflection could live, she could wait. Researchers of the supernatural called it preemptive mimicry, a phenomenon where the spirit precedes the living's movements as if rehearsing life before it's lived. But those who encountered her said it felt like something far more disturbing. "She's not copying me," said one survivor. "She's studying me, trying to get it right." One girl claimed she stared at her reflection for a full minute. No movement, no blinking. Then, suddenly, her reflection grinned, while her real face stayed still. The girl screamed and turned away. When she looked back, the reflection was normal. But that night, her bedroom mirror cracked, and in the center, in the pattern of the splintered glass, was the faint shape of a face, smiling. Spiritual scholars warned, it's not the mirror that traps her, it's your recognition. When you see her and think, "That's me," she wins. They began to advise a new rule: never meet your own eyes at night, especially in July, especially if the calendar is near. Because if your reflection moves first, you're not in control anymore. She is. Burning it should have worked. That's how you cleanse haunted objects in every culture. Flame purifies. Whether it's a cursed doll, a joss effigy, or a possessed charm, the ritual is almost always the same. Burn it, scatter the ashes, and never look back. But this calendar would not burn. The first person to try was a temple caretaker in Selangor. He'd found the calendar in a box of old offerings behind the altar room, still intact, still eerily preserved, the pages yellowed but never brittle. He lit a match and placed it under the corner of the 7th month page. The flame caught and then stopped. No wind, no moisture, no chemical coating. The matchstick crumbled, but the page remained, slightly darkened but untouched. He tried again with joss sticks, then a small fire pit, then kerosene. Same result. The fire refused to spread. Instead, the ink began to move. Not bleed, not melt. Move. The brush strokes of the girl's hair unraveled like threads. Her eyes blinked, subtly, not on the paper, but beneath it, as if a layer of skin were peeling back to reveal something beneath the art. Desperate, he called for an elder monk. The monk told him not to burn it, but to return it. Things that refuse to die are not meant to be destroyed. They're meant to be left alone. The caretaker ignored him. Later that night, the hourglass of time clung. Angel dust isn't a factor in this equation. The fire alarm in the temple rang, not because of smoke, but because of heat. When they broke into the storage room, everything inside had burned to ash, except the calendar. It was lying in the center of the floor, completely untouched, while the walls around it were scorched black. The 7th page was missing. Similar reports followed. A collector in Johor claimed his antique calendar had melted the lighter in his hand. A spiritualist in Thailand said the flame from her candle recoiled like water when touched to the edges. One exorcist tried to rip it instead, only to have his fingernails fall off the next day, as if he'd clawed at something unnatural. And when people did manage to tear off the page, not burn it, strange things began to happen. Clocks in the room would stop. Reflections would flicker, even in places without mirrors, and the scent of burnt paper and hair would hang in the air for days, no source found. One survivor said it best: "You don't burn the calendar burns you." Slowly, quietly, from the inside out. By now, the rumors had evolved into a warning. Don't flip the calendar. Don't burn it. Don't tear the 7th page. Because each act, no matter how well-intentioned, does the same thing. It tells her you believe. And belief gives her shape, gives her reason, gives her permission.
They say only a few copies remain. Most were destroyed, lost in floods, burned with fear, or forgotten in dusty corners of shops that no longer exist. But every once in a while, one resurfaces in an antique stall, a temple storage room, a forgotten attic, and always with the same cursed aura. The ink never fades, the 7th page is always intact, and the girl never blinks until you see her. The most infamous copy was discovered in 2017 in the back room of an old Hokkien medicine shop in Georgetown, Penang. The shop had been closed since the late 80s, boarded up after its elderly owner disappeared without a trace during the Hungry Ghost Festival. When the property was finally sold, the new owners found the calendar still hanging, untouched, unmoved, completely preserved, on the back wall of the office, behind a shattered mirror. It was open to the 7th lunar month, and the date was the same as the day the old man vanished, August 22nd, 1987. A group of paranormal researchers retrieved the calendar, carefully placing it inside a blessed glass box lined with iron shavings, talismans, and sea salt. They brought it to Kuala Lumpur for study, intending to include it in an exhibition about Southeast Asian folklore. But within 3 weeks of its arrival, 2 of the researchers went missing. One was found catatonic in her apartment, eyes wide, murmuring the same line. "She's behind the glass now, but glass breaks." Security cameras in the museum captured motion in the locked exhibit room, where no one had entered. And most disturbingly, the calendar, which had been sealed behind a double-pane display, was discovered flipped to the next page. No one had touched it. No fingerprints, no broken seal. Just one single change. Her smile was wider. After that incident, the exhibition was canceled. The calendar was handed over to a Taoist coalition who debated whether to destroy it or bury it in sacred ground. But the coalition couldn't agree because no one wanted to take it home. No one wanted to be the one responsible for transporting it. No one wanted to be the last person to look at it directly. In the end, they locked it in a reinforced steel box, placed within a temple vault lined with mercury-coated mirrors, a trick from ancient burial rituals said to confuse spirits. But even then, the monks reported something strange. Every morning, the box was found moved, just slightly, no matter where it had been stored. Sometimes rotated, sometimes an inch closer to the temple's main altar. And once they found it perfectly centered beneath the largest mirror, as if it had walked there. Today, the box still rests in that vault, unopened, unseen. But the calendar remains, waiting. And the girl? She no longer needs to be everywhere, just somewhere. because if even one copy still exists, she still has a door, and someone, somewhere, will always be curious enough to open it.
Not everyone died. Amidst the disappearances, the shattered mirrors, the whispers behind reflections, there were a handful of people who lived to tell the tale. Some dismissed as mad, others as liars, but their stories share one chilling thread. They all encountered her, and they all survived by breaking the pattern. Case 1. The grandmother who hung it upside down. In a fishing village near Muar, Johor, an elderly woman known only as Ama Lin found the calendar in a bundle of old prayer scrolls her son had collected from a junk shop. She hung it in her hallway, unaware of its history, but in her old age, her eyesight had faded, and she hung the calendar upside down. For weeks, villagers said they heard strange noises near her home, whispers, the sound of pages turning in the night, but nothing ever happened to her. When a relative later visited and corrected the calendar's position, turning it upright, Ama Lin fell into a coma that very night. She survived, barely, and woke up whispering, "She found me once I stood her straight, but upside down, she didn't recognize herself." Since then, many spiritualists have theorized, orientation disrupts invitation. A misaligned image breaks the mirror logic and temporarily confuses the spirit. Case 2. The blind man who saw her differently. In Kuala Lumpur, a retired school teacher named Mr. Tan, blind since birth, reported a chilling experience in 2001. He was gifted the calendar by a neighbor and kept it out of politeness. Though he couldn't see it, he often felt a strange coldness near it, especially during the 7th month. One night, he woke to a sound, the calendar's pages flipping on their own. Though blind, he sensed someone standing beside his bed, breathing, not moving. Instead of reacting with fear, Mr. Tan spoke to her. He whispered, "If you're here because no one sees you, I'm here because I never could. So stay. I won't look, but I'll remember." The air shifted. The coldness receded. Mr. Tan kept the calendar for another year. He was never harmed. Case 3. The monk who let her in. At a secluded hilltop shrine in Sarawak, a young monk named John had studied restless spirits and wandering souls for years. He asked for the calendar to be delivered to his temple. Against all advice, he flipped it to the 7th page, lit a candle, and stared into a mirror with the page beside him. He whispered, "I see you." Then he did something no one else had dared. He invited her. He offered incense, water, rice, and a name, one of his own creation, Li Shu. He wrote it beneath the image with red ink and placed a death tablet on his altar, as if she had been a real soul, lost and forgotten. That night, he dreamed of her. She stood at the edge of a foggy river, no longer smiling, just watching. She said nothing, but when he woke, the calendar's 7th page was blank. Only the red name remained, Li Shu. John kept the page sealed in his altar box. He moved temples shortly after, and never saw her again. What these survivors revealed was terrifying and hopeful. The calendar girl doesn't just punish. She responds to how she is seen. If you see her as death, she becomes it. But if you see her as grief, sorrow, memory, she pauses. But that pause is not salvation. It's only a moment of mercy. Because, in the end,
she still waits. At the edge of Taiping, nestled between rubber plantations and mist-covered hills, stood an abandoned colonial house known by locals as Rumah Kertas Mati, the paper death house. It earned the name not because of how it looked, but because of what kept happening inside. No matter who moved in, families, travelers, even spiritual researchers, they all reported the same impossible phenomenon. The calendar in the hallway would flip to the 7th lunar month on its own, even when removed, even when burned, even when no calendar existed in the house to begin with. The first documented case came in 1994, when a young couple moved into the house after winning it in a suspiciously cheap auction. Neither of them was superstitious. The husband, an architect, even mocked the old tales. But on the night of the Hungry Ghost Festival, he awoke to the soft sound of fluttering pages. There was no calendar in the house. When he went to the hallway, he found one, hanging on the wall, aged, dusty, and open to July. Neither of them had seen it before. He tore it down and threw it out the next morning. But that night, it returned. Same spot, same page. This time, it had a burn mark on the edge. The following night, their bathroom mirror cracked in half, and they left the house by dawn. Other tenants reported similar experiences. A Buddhist nun claimed the 7th page appeared in her prayer book after staying in the house one night. A visiting photographer took pictures of the empty walls, only to find a calendar visible in every developed frame. A foreign documentary team installed motion sensors. They were triggered 3 times, always at 3:17 a.m. Each time, the sound recording picked up pages flipping, followed by a soft, female giggle. The house was eventually sealed shut, but in 2018, a group of thrill-seeking urban explorers broke in, filming a live ghost hunting session. The camera captured this: the hallway, empty. A nail on the wall, rusted but bare. One explorer jokingly saying, "Let's hang a calendar and invite her." Laughter. Then static. When the feed returned 40 seconds later, the frame was tilted, shaky. The camera lay on the ground, but in its view, clear and unmistakable, a calendar, hanging, open to the 7th page. And the girl was not smiling. Her mouth was slightly open, as if she was breathing. The explorers were never found, but the last comment posted on their live stream before the video was scrubbed from the platform read, "Did anyone else see her move? Look behind the one holding the flashlight. She blinked." After that night, Rumah Kertas Mati was declared a silent zone by local elders, a place where rituals must not be performed, offerings must not be left, and no paper calendar should ever be brought in again. But the house remains, and those who walk past say they sometimes hear pages turning in the dark, even when the windows are sealed shut, because she doesn't need your permission anymore. She only needs time, and time always moves forward. At first, she was bound to paper, ink and date, image and page. A painted girl trapped inside a forbidden month, waiting, watching, cursed only so far as the edges of a calendar could carry her. But something changed. She was seen, she was feared, she was remembered. And with each retelling, each whispered warning, each photo uploaded, and each video shared, her reach grew wider. The talisman ash stopped appearing. The mirrors stopped cracking. And yet, the disappearances continued. It was a spiritual archivist in Singapore who first said it out loud. In a 2020 podcast titled Echoes from the Paper Gate, he shared a disturbing theory. She's not in the calendar anymore. She's in the idea of it. His voice shook as he recounted emails he'd received after mentioning the calendar story publicly. Messages from listeners in countries where the calendar was never distributed, people who had never set foot in Malaysia. They all described the same phenomena: seeing a girl in reflective surfaces, even with no calendar present, finding fragments of ash near their beds, though they burned nothing, hearing pages turn in rooms without books, and one common phrase that haunted every story: "I didn't flip anything, I just remembered her." A linguist in Taiwan conducted a digital test. He ran AI simulations using the image of the calendar girl, pixelated and distorted, hidden within randomized art files. Participants were shown various images and asked to pick the most emotionally unsettling. Over 70% chose the one containing her, even though they couldn't describe why. One participant said, "It felt like I was being watched, like something behind the image recognized me." And when the linguist tried to delete the original image from his computer, it wouldn't go. The file regenerated, renamed itself, dated itself, 7th lunar month. People began to say the calendar no longer needs to physically exist. She lives now in memory, in fear, in narrative, like a virus that spreads through stories. Each time someone hears about her, each time someone doubts and searches for proof, each time someone types "calendar girl ghost" into a browser or speaks her name near a mirror, she steps a little closer. And the final page, it's no longer bound by paper. It's in your mind, waiting to be turned. One final quote, scrawled on the last page of a journal recovered from a missing folklorist in Bangkok, says, "She isn't bound to July anymore. She isn't waiting for Ghost Month. She's already in the mirror. All that's left is for you to notice her."
At first, it's easy to dismiss. You're tired. It's late. You pass by a darkened window or glance at the bathroom mirror, and you hear it, just barely, like the rustle of fabric or the soft crunk of paper bending. Maybe even a faint voice, too faint to catch, too soft to follow. But then it happens again, and again. And one night, you realize it's not outside the room. It's inside the glass. Psychics call it glass-bound echoing, a rare auditory phenomenon where spirits no longer need full embodiment, just reflection, memory, and a moment of your attention. The calendar girl, once painted, once printed, once tethered to a talisman and a time of year, has evolved. Now she speaks, and not through mouths, through surfaces. A young man in Vietnam recounted his experience in a viral Reddit post. "I don't own the calendar, never even seen it in real life, but after reading the story, I swear something changed. My mirror fogged up one morning, and in the mist, I saw a single Chinese character drawn in the condensation. Ding! I looked it up. It means wait." Another report came from a girl in the Philippines who stayed overnight in an Airbnb near Malacca. The host had removed all mirrors except one,
hidden behind the wardrobe. At exactly 3:03 a.m., she heard a soft whisper, "Can I come through?" She turned on the lights. The room was empty, but in the wardrobe mirror, there was a handprint on the inside. Audio analysts studying recordings from known haunted locations have isolated a consistent, barely audible signature, a whisper layered beneath ambient room noise found in rooms with reflective surfaces. When slowed down and filtered, the voice forms a chilling sentence in Hokkien. "I'm still waiting for you to flip." The worst reports come from those who try to speak back. They stand before the mirror. They whisper into the dark. They ask, "Who are you?" Or worse, "What do you want?" And the answer comes, not in full sentences, not always in words, sometimes in visions, sometimes in reflection, but always with the same message. "You gave me a name. You gave me a story. Now, give me space." Every time you look into a mirror, she waits for hesitation. She waits for recognition. Because once you notice the whisper, once you listen just a little too long, once you wonder, that's when the glass becomes thin. And that's when she begins to push. She used to be confined to the calendar, a single page, a printed image, a seasonal ghost with a lunar leash. But then someone tried to preserve her, not in ink, not in prayer, in glass. In 2009, a collector of haunted artifacts from Bangkok acquired a copy of the calendar rumored to contain the original 7th page, the one with the faint reddish brush marks, the eerie funeral sketch beneath the watercolor, and the date circled not once, but 3 times. Instead of destroying it, he did what collectors do. He framed it. High-quality glass, black lacquer wood, UV protected, hung in a climate-controlled room between a dybbuk box and a cursed Burmese puppet. He named the room the Still Archive. But after 3 weeks, something strange began happening. The collector would find the frame tilted every morning, sometimes off-center, sometimes crooked, hanging by one nail. Once it was found face down on the carpet, unbroken. Security footage showed no movement, no visitors. But in every frame leading up to the time the picture fell, there was one flickering reflection in the glass. A girl, hair long, dress pale, eyes smiling. He moved the frame to storage. Still, it reappeared, once in his office, once in his bathroom, once in the back seat of his locked car. The girl was no longer just inside the frame. She was behind it. Wherever he placed it, wherever it leaned, mirrors nearby began to cloud. Pictures of him developed with distortions. In every photo, a faint figure stood in the background, always near something reflective. Finally, he shipped the frame to a warehouse in Penang with instructions never to unpack it. A month later, the warehouse burned down. The only object recovered? The frame, pristine, unscorched. But the image inside had changed. The girl's head had tilted. Her fingers now rested on the edge of the frame as if preparing to climb out. Other stories began to surface. A hotel guest in Malacca found a vintage frame in her room. It contained no photo, just a single line of Chinese script burned into the wood, saying, "I followed you here." A boy in Singapore brought home a second-hand mirror with a faint outline behind the glass, one he thought was just a flaw. 3 nights later, the outline pressed its hand to the glass. Experts now warn, never frame the page, never place her behind glass. Glass was never meant to keep her in. It's the door she's always waiting behind. And once framed, she becomes portable. You don't have to see her. You just have to be near the frame long enough for her to recognize you as the next page. Because the girl in the calendar is tired of waiting, tired of being watched. She wants to be remembered everywhere. And now, she's not just in one house or one story. She's in the reflection that followed you home.
They were trying to destroy her again. It was a private exorcism. No press, no live streams. Just 3 spirit workers from different traditions, one Taoist, one Buddhist, and one old Malay Bomo, all agreeing to one purpose: burn the last known page. End the calendar girl. They gathered in the northern highlands of Malaysia, where the air was thinner, the noise of the city far away, and the veil between realms, according to local belief, easier to thin, but also easier to close. The page was placed inside a circle of salted ash, beneath the sky dimmed by clouds. The fire was lit. The paper caught immediately. Flames danced. Smoke rose. It burned clean, quickly, almost too quickly. They thought it was over, until they saw what the fire left behind. In the center of the circle, unburned, untouched by the flames, was another page. Not a duplicate, not a copy. An entirely new page. The ink was still wet, the lines freshly painted. It hadn't been there before. The girl was there, of course, but her expression had changed. She was no longer smiling. Her eyes were closed. Her fingers were raised, not outward, but upward, pointing, not at them, at something behind them. The Bomo was the first to move. He turned and saw nothing. But when he looked back, the new page was no longer in the circle. It was resting on the edge of the fire pit, just outside the protective salt line. Then the flames flared, not from wood, but from the air. Heat radiated like breath, and inside the fire, they saw her. Not the page, not the drawing, her. She stood in the flames, motionless, skin pale, hair billowing, not from wind, but from intention. She wasn't burning, she wasn't trapped. She was watching. And behind her, a wall of calendars, thousands of them, all blank, all waiting. The Buddhist monk collapsed. The Taoist screamed the name of a protection deity, but the words froze in his mouth. The Bomo tried to throw holy oil into the flame. The oil never touched fire. It disappeared mid-air, like it had passed through another world entirely. Then, just as suddenly, the flames died. The fire pit was empty, cold, silent. Except the new page remained. It was no longer painted. It was a photograph of the 3 of them from just minutes earlier, but with one difference. The girl stood behind them, smiling. Since that night, no one has attempted to burn a page again, because the fire didn't destroy her. It gave her new ink. Now, the rumors say, every flame you stare into too long, from candles, from campfires, from screensavers, you might see movement, a figure, a hand,
a smile. And when you blink, you'll swear she wasn't there at all. But the heat stays, and the feeling behind your neck lingers. Because she's not in the page anymore. She's in the fire. They warned never to replicate her, never trace her image, never sketch her outline, never give form to what was once only cursed by memory. Because drawing her isn't harmless, it's inviting her back. But artists are curious by nature, and some don't believe until it's too late. In 2021, a young illustrator named Zheng Lei became obsessed with the story of the calendar girl. He wasn't a believer. He was a digital artist who ran a horror-themed Instagram page where he reimagined old Southeast Asian legends in modern, stylized designs. When followers dared him to try drawing the calendar girl, he laughed and replied, "Sure, I'll even give her a name." That was his first mistake. Zhang searched the internet for references. He couldn't find the original page. It had been wiped from forums, archives, even old blogs. But that only intrigued him more. So he drew her from memory, not his own, but from stories. He pieced her together. Long black hair, blank white eyes, a smile just a little too calm, her hands folded as if waiting, and behind her a faded lunar calendar set to the 7th month. He uploaded the image with the caption, "Recreated from the legend. What if she looked like this?" The post gained 22,000 likes overnight, and then things began to change. His followers messaged him in panic. "Why is she blinking? Was that image animated? It just moved. Dude, your post made my mirror crack last night." Some unfollowed. Some begged him to take it down. But Zhang was enjoying the attention. He printed the image, framed it above his workstation, and even began designing an NFT version. That was his second mistake. One night, while live streaming a speed paint session, Zhang paused mid-stroke. He stared at the screen, said nothing for 10 seconds, then whispered, "She's standing behind me, right?" The stream cut out. He never came back online. His apartment was later found abandoned, lights on, computer still running, all files intact except one. The calendar girl portrait was gone. Every trace of the file, every print, even the framed version above his desk, empty. Only the glass remained, smeared with a single fingerprint. A child-sized fingerprint, pressed from inside. Now, artists report strange things when trying to draw her. Pens running dry when starting her eyes. Canvas tearing only at her smile. Finished drawings looking slightly different the next day. One illustrator in Korea claimed the girl he drew wasn't the one he imagined. She added things to herself. Her fingers were longer. Her dress had symbols I never painted. And the worst part, her expression changed when I blinked. The lesson is clear. She doesn't need to be painted again. She's already alive in the act of drawing. Every pencil stroke gives her breath. Every line gives her shape. Every artist gives her a new body. Because creating her isn't creation. It's resurrection. His name was known only among the fringe, whispered in collector circles, feared in occult trading forums. They called him the Archivist. No real name, no photographs, no verified identity. But everyone knew what he wanted. haunted objects, cursed paper, forbidden pages. And in 2015, he made his most reckless acquisition yet, a near-complete set of the original Calendar Girl run. 11 pages were harmless enough anyway. But the 12th, the 7th lunar month, was missing. He wanted it. He needed it. He didn't care about the legends. He didn't fear the warnings. He was obsessed. "I don't want to destroy her," he once wrote in an encrypted forum post. "I want to contain her. I want to understand her rules, and maybe rewrite them." He eventually found the final page, or more accurately, it found him. One morning he awoke to a parcel resting neatly on his antique desk. No return address, no courier slip. Inside, a sealed envelope, hand-stitched, old, yellowed, and within it, the final piece, the Ghost Month girl. Her image was pristine, her eyes slightly different from all documented versions, not blank, but sharply aware. Her hand no longer folded. It rested against the bottom edge of the page, as if leaning out. He framed it, not with glass, with obsidian mirror, polished to a black reflective sheen. He called it the Void Case, designed to absorb and trap. And for months, nothing happened. No cracks, no ash, no whispers. Until one day, his reflection vanished. He noticed it in passing, washing his hands, brushing his teeth. The mirror showed the room, the lights, the counter, but not him. He tried other mirrors, same thing. Then his phone camera, his laptop webcam, even water in a bowl. No reflection, no image, nothing. It was as if he'd become a ghost himself, but only on the surface. And yet, something else was there. In place of his reflection, he sometimes saw movement, a shape standing where he should be, not fully visible, not defined, but every now and then, her eyes. And in the reflection of the obsidian case, she didn't look trapped. She looked comfortable, like she had switched places. He kept a journal. One final entry was found, handwritten in jagged script, smeared at the edges as if written in panic. She didn't want freedom. She wanted a vessel. The mirror wasn't her prison. It was her door. And I opened it from the inside. The archivist was never seen again. His apartment sealed by local authorities, every reflective surface covered in red cloth. But witnesses say when the wind blows just right and the cloth lifts, there's still no reflection, but there is a smile and two eyes watching. And somewhere in the center of the room, encased in obsidian, the Calendar Girl rests. No longer a painting, no longer a page, now a presence, one without a shadow, because she doesn't cast one. She consumes them.
They always say the curse begins when you flip the page, that it's your choice, your action, your hand tearing or turning, the moment that opens the door. But what if you never touched it? What if the page changed on its own? In 2022, a school teacher in Ipoh named Miss Lee discovered an old lunar calendar in a second-hand bookstore. It was beautiful, traditional Hokkien motifs, gold-threaded edges, hand-painted girls for each month. No Ghost Month image, or so she thought. She hung it in her classroom. Her students loved it, colorful, elegant, a cultural touch point. She never flipped the page. She had no reason to.
The school year had just started. It was January. She taught history, not superstition. And then, one Monday morning, she stepped into the classroom and froze. The calendar had changed. The first thing she noticed was the girl. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her hands, previously raised in greeting, were now lowered, folded across her lap. Her hair was longer, her face sharper. And most disturbingly, the month displayed at the top was wrong. It wasn't January, it was July. She assumed it was a prank. Maybe a student replaced the page. But when she removed the calendar to check, the pages underneath were still sealed. The glue hadn't been touched. There was no tear, no sign of tampering. And the next day, it changed again. Now the girl's eyes were open, wide, and empty, and the background had shifted. Where there were once clouds and blossoms, there was now something darker. Ash, mirror fragments, and in the corner, almost invisible, the faint outline of a reflection that didn't match the girl. She took it home, burned it, or tried to. It wouldn't catch. Instead, the pages turned on their own, each one flicking slowly as the flames licked the edges, until it reached the 7th month again, and stopped. The fire died. The ash never formed. The girl now looked directly forward, straight into Miss Lee's eyes. That night, her bedroom mirror cracked. She left her home, checked into a hotel, told no one. But in the hotel room, freshly cleaned, nothing on the walls, a calendar appeared by morning. Same design, same sequence. She screamed, tore it down, fled again. But wherever she went, the page followed. Sometimes not even as a calendar. Once it was on a restaurant menu. Another time hidden in a travel brochure. A photo on someone's phone. A reflection in a glass window. Because now, the curse wasn't about turning the page. The page turned you. You didn't have to believe. You didn't have to touch. You only had to see. Just once. And from then on, she remembers your eyes. The last thing Miss Lee posted before she vanished was a short entry on an anonymous folklore forum. I never flipped the calendar, but every time I wake up, it's July. It's the final truth the old ones never spoke aloud, not in chants, not in scrolls, not even in whispers behind temple walls, because remembrance in some traditions is a blessing. But for her, remembrance is a curse. Not yours, hers. Centuries ago, in rural Fujian province, there was a mourning rite practiced in secret, a ritual reserved for children who died without ever being named. They were not buried with offerings. They were not honored during Ghost Month. They were not written into the family ledger, because to name a soul that had no voice was to give it reason to stay. So instead, these forgotten ones were given one final gift, forgetting. Their faces were sketched once onto yellow paper. A talisman was drawn over it. The eyes were left blank, and then burned before nightfall. No one was to speak of them again. No one was to draw them again. No one was to remember. It was not cruelty, it was mercy. But someone remembered her. Someone found the sketch. Someone traced her eyes. Someone gave her colors, a dress, a name, a month. And in that act, memory became mirror, and mirror became doorway. And she, the unnamed, the unfinished, the forgotten, became real. A retired monk in Penang once said this before his death: "She was a silence, you gave her voice. She was still, you painted her into motion. She was supposed to be lost, but now every story brings her closer." Now, folklore scholars classify her not as a ghost, but as a construct of collective recall, a thought echo, a memory entity, a belief that has become more powerful than the truth it was based on. Because what people fear more than death is being forgotten. And she was, until someone made her beautiful and cursed her with attention. Her story was never meant to be told. She was never meant to be loved, or feared, or drawn, or sold, or streamed, or shared. But now that she's known, she's permanent. And the cruelest truth? Every time someone retells the tale to warn others, they make her stronger. They make her clearer. They remember her again. So what do we do now? Do we stop speaking her name? Do we tear down the images, burn the calendars, cover the mirrors? Maybe. But the damage is done. Because you know her now. You've pictured her. You've imagined the smile. You've felt the chill. And when the next page in your life turns, you might glance at the corner of the mirror and see the faint outline of someone else standing there, not moving, just waiting, because she was never meant to be remembered. But now that you do, she will never forget you. To understand why she can't be erased, why she returns through mirrors, ash, and memory, you must go back, not to the calendar, but to the brush. Because before she was painted, before the printing, before the deaths, she was sketched. And the story of that sketch has been deliberately buried. In the spring of 1979, 3 years before the infamous calendar was printed, an elderly Hokkien funerary artist named Lau Bin Tiong was commissioned to draw a portrait for a child's spirit tablet. It was routine work, a delicate task, often uncredited, meant only to give temporary shape to a soul too young to be remembered. But this time, something was wrong. The family had no name to give, no photo, only vague details. She died before her first birthday. She never cried. She died with her eyes open. The mother refused to attend the ritual. The father burned the child's clothes without speaking a word. Lau, hesitant but duty-bound, took the commission anyway. He began the sketch the next night. He followed the usual method, a basic outline of a child's face, eyes half-lidded, mouth neutral, symbolic lotus on the chest. But as he drew, the strokes changed. His hand trembled, not from age, but from something else, something guiding him. Each brush stroke felt forced, like something was pushing back. By the time he stepped back, the image was no longer what he intended. It was a young girl, not an infant, hair long, eyes blank, and a smile faint but unnatural, as if she knew she had been seen again. He dropped the brush. What disturbed him most was the background. He never painted it. But there it was, behind the girl, in fading ink, a full calendar grid, 1 month, the 7th lunar month, and in red, one date circled 3 times. He didn't remember painting any of it. Lau tried to destroy the sketch, but when he threw it into the fire, The paper folded instead of burning, like it was bracing itself. The flames hissed and then extinguished. The smell that rose wasn't ash. It was wet soil and stale perfume. He sealed the sketch in red cloth and buried it behind his workshop, never telling the family. That night, he dreamed of her. She stood at the foot of his bed, not a spirit, not a child, but the exact girl from his drawing, older now. She didn't speak. She just stared at him with recognition, as if she had waited for years to be seen again. The next morning, Lau left town. He closed his workshop and vanished. Some say he fled to Thailand. Others say he joined a monastery and cut out his own tongue to silence what he knew. But before he left, he did one final thing. He handed the wrapped sketch to a younger artist, a rising talent named Tay Menghua, known for painting beauty calendars for local businesses, with only one instruction. If you ever see her again, don't finish the face. 3 years later, Tay painted the calendar girl. The 7th page was never part of the approved design, and yet when the proof sheets were printed, her image was there, fully formed, smiling. Now we know why no version of her is ever exactly the same. She's not being copied. She's finishing herself, using the brush, using your hands, using memory. And the sketch, the very first one, is still missing, still sealed somewhere, still growing older, because she was never supposed to be remembered. But someone drew her into existence, and now she's just waiting for someone else to pick up the brush.
In every haunted story, there is a moment when the object stops behaving like an object. A doll begins to blink. A mirror reflects something that isn't there. A photo changes when no one's looking. For the calendar girl, that moment was the ink. Not the paper, not the brush, not the artist. The ink itself. In 1982, the Lunar print shop sourced their ink from a local supplier in Selangor, a small family-run business that specialized in hand-ground pigments made with traditional Chinese techniques. Most were harmless, but one batch stood out. Batch number 77J. It was darker than usual, thicker, with a reddish sheen that shimmered beneath black. The label said for ceremonial use only, but due to a shipment mix-up, it was accidentally added to the production run for the lunar calendar. That's the ink that was used for the 7th page. The print technician who loaded the ink remembered something odd. It smelled like old incense and rainwater, and when I poured it, it moved. Not flowed, moved. Like it was looking for something. Once printed, that page never fully dried. Even weeks later, when workers stacked the calendars, the 7th page smudged slightly when touched. Some described it as sticky. Others said it felt warm, like skin. One employee, curious and defiant, tried scraping the ink off with a blade. It came off, not as dry flakes, but as threads. Fine, black, hair-like filaments that coiled at the edge of his knife. He went home that night with ink still under his fingernails. He was found dead 3 days later, collapsed in his bathroom, mirror shattered, his hand clenched around a small clump of long black strands. But the autopsy found something worse. His veins were stained black, as if the ink had entered his blood. It didn't stop there.
Other victims exposed to the original calendar complained of similar symptoms: persistent warmth in the fingertips, stains that wouldn't wash off, and worst of all, nightmares where they were painting a face over and over, but it was always painting itself. A spiritual calligrapher in Taiwan analyzed a surviving fragment of the 7th page under ritual light. He found that the ink contained crushed cinnabar, bone ash, and an organic component he refused to name publicly. When pressed, he simply said, "This wasn't ink. It was remembrance, something that bleeds into paper and waits." And here's what's most disturbing. Even when scanned digitally, even when printed from an online photo, even when replicated with completely different ink, the 7th page still smudges. Printers jam, toner melts, digital files corrupt, as if the act of printing her is not duplication, it's awakening. They say if you ever touch one of the originals, your fingers will carry a trace of that ink, even if invisible. And one night, when you pass a foggy mirror or look into a still pool of water, you'll see a fingerprint there, pressed from the other side, still wet. At first, it felt like déjà vu. People reported seeing the same calendar date, twice, then 3 times. Then a whole week where the moon stayed full, unnaturally bright, too still in the sky. Most shrugged it off, a glitch in their phone calendar, a printing error on the wall. But in towns where the Ghost Girls page had once hung, Ghost Month wouldn't end. It began in the coastal city of Kuantan. Locals noticed something strange after the Hungry Ghost Festival had passed. Food offerings remained on doorsteps for weeks. Stray dogs refused to enter alleyways they used to sleep in. The incense ash in family altars kept growing even when no one had lit anything. And the calendar? It wouldn't flip. One man, a florist named Mr. Chan, tried to tear off the page for the 8th lunar month, but every morning it returned. The 7th month still there, the ghost girl's image slightly more defined each time. By the 5th day, the page showed new detail. Her mouth slightly open, a second hand resting on the frame, and what looked like a faded face behind her, as if someone else was beginning to appear. Mr. Chan stopped sleeping. He died of a stroke 2 weeks later, calendar still clutched in his hand, stuck on the same day as the day he first flipped it. Others across Malaysia began reporting similar anomalies. Moon phases out of sync, digital clocks flashing 7/7 randomly, days that repeated themselves, the same conversations, the same news headlines, the same shadows on the wall. It was as if time had bent around one specific month, refusing to let it go, as if she wasn't done yet. A Taoist master described it like this: Ghost Month is supposed to be a door. It opens, spirits pass. The rites close it. But if one refuses to leave, the door stays open, and the month never ends. Some tried to force it closed. They burned new calendars, held extended Hungry Ghost rituals into the next lunar cycle. Some even buried timepieces in temple grounds, hoping to confuse the flow of time. Nothing worked. One monk, after chanting through an entire night, whispered with a pale face, "She's not stuck in time. She is time. Or rather, she's building her own." Now there are places where it's always the 7th month. Abandoned flats where clocks are frozen at 7:07. Temples where the moonlight never fades, even at noon. Mirrors that reflect night even when the sun is out. And calendars always found open to July, no matter the year, even when blank, even when brand new, even when there was no ghost month printed at all. Because once the door was opened and she stepped through, she stopped being a date. She became a loop, a chapter that doesn't end, a page that doesn't turn. And if you feel lately like every day is the same, if the night feels a little longer than it should, if the silence hums when it should rest, then maybe, just maybe, you're still in her month and you never left.
It begins softly, so soft you question if it's even real. Just the faintest flick, like a paper page catching wind in a room with no windows open. You ignore it the first time, then it happens again and again. Always when you're alone, always when it's quiet, and always when you're not near any books. The sound of pages turning used to be comforting, the rhythm of time, learning, life. But now it means something's reading, or worse, something's waiting for you to. In 2023, residents of an old apartment block in Ipoh reported hearing pages turning in the middle of the night. No books were open, no magazines, no fans on. The sound came from empty rooms, vacant units, or, more unsettling, from behind closed bathroom mirrors. One tenant placed a recorder overnight. It picked up the sound clearly. 12 distinct flicks, perfectly spaced, like a hand turning pages one by one. Then a pause. Then the sound of a chair creaking, followed by a faint exhale. In another case, a night security guard at a closed-down school heard it every hour, always from classroom 3A. The room had been stripped bare, no furniture, no paper, no calendars. He finally opened the door during one occurrence. The sound stopped, but when he entered, he saw footprints made of soot across the tile floor, leading to the far wall, where a shadow of a girl seemed to linger just for a moment before vanishing. He quit the next day. Folklorists believe it's not just residual energy. They believe it's her presence rehearsing. Each turn of the page isn't time passing. It's her moving closer, like a librarian tracking which chapter you're on, like an echo of your future self, already flipping ahead to the part where you vanish. Some victims report more personal phenomena. Pages turning when they think about her. Pages turning in their dreams, in rooms that don't exist. Pages turning in audio recordings they never made. One survivor said, "I heard the pages turning behind me. I turned around and my wall was gone. In its place, a hallway made of calendars, and at the end, she was waiting, holding the next page." The worst part? Even digital devices aren't safe now. A university student left a PDF of the cursed calendar open on his laptop. It began flipping on its own, not scrolling, turning. And when it reached the 7th page, his screen froze. His webcam light turned on by itself, and for 1.6 seconds, a face appeared in the reflection of his black screen. Not his face, hers.
Experts now advise, if you hear pages turning in an empty room, don't speak, don't investigate, don't ask, who's there? Because if she thinks you're reading with her, she'll skip to your final chapter and start writing the end. His name was Wang Yuan, a literature professor at a private university in Kuala Lumpur. Known for his quiet temperament and fascination with forgotten folklore, he often told his students, stories aren't harmless. They remember who listens. In 2024, Professor Wang began drafting a paper titled The Oral Virus, Haunting Through Narrative Transmission. Its centerpiece, the legend of the calendar girl. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in stories and how they behave like living organisms, infecting, spreading, needing only one thing to survive: a reader. He first encountered the tale as a footnote in an old Hokkien folk manuscript. One line scratched in the margin in ink faded to brown. Do not read her aloud after the 7th page. She turns to you if you turn to her. Intrigued, Wang began collecting fragments of the myth, archived forum posts long deleted, photos of blank pages that returned with images overnight, testimonies of people who dreamed of a girl in white long before knowing the story. He compiled everything into a 78-page manuscript. The final chapter was meant to be titled Reclaiming the Page, Breaking the Curse Through Silence. But he never finished it. On May 7, 2024, he was seen entering his office at 6:42 p.m. Campus security footage showed him carrying a stack of documents and a digital voice recorder. At 7:13 p.m., a cleaning staff member walked past his door and heard him reading aloud, slowly, methodically, like narrating something for transcription. Then came a sharp pause, then silence. When they knocked, there was no reply. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room was empty. No signs of struggle, no broken windows. His laptop still open, recorder still running. The last thing the audio captured was his voice, calm but cautious. And when you reach the 7th page, if you speak her name, a pause, then the sound of paper rustling, then breathing, not his, not human, shallow, rhythmic, as if someone had leaned into the mic from the other side. Then, finally, she's not in the story anymore. She's in the reader. Authorities dismissed it as a disappearance. Students held a memorial, but within a week, 2 students who had helped him transcribe the interviews both fell ill. One was found staring into her bathroom mirror for hours, unblinking. The other began speaking in fragments from the manuscript, pages that had never been typed. When asked what he was quoting from, he replied, "The next chapter, the one he never got to write." Now there's a warning among students in that faculty. Never read Wang's manuscript out loud, never play the recording, and never, under any circumstances, finish the sentence he didn't. Because some say that sentence was a key, and if you complete it, you're no longer the reader. You become the next page. In the heart of Penang stood an old colonial library, quiet and forgotten. The kind with dust thick enough to dull gold-lettered spines, and windows too tall to fully light the aisles. Few visited, fewer borrowed. But those who did often spoke of aisle 7B. They didn't know why they avoided it. They just did. The head librarian, Madam Ong, had worked there for 41 years. She kept impeccable records. knew every misplaced volume by heart, could tell the difference between printer's ink and mildew by scent alone. But in the spring of 2021, something began to change. Books from aisle 7B started to shift, not fall, not go missing, shift. Their order, alphabetical one day, would return scrambled the next. Books open to pages no one remembered turning, and always, always the smell of burnt paper near the nonfiction folklore section. One morning, a student returned a thin, red-bound volume titled Traditional Lunar Rites of the Peranakan Chinese. It hadn't been on the catalog for over 20 years. Madam Ung didn't remember checking it out. She didn't remember ever shelving it. And when she opened it, her breath caught. Inside was a loose calendar page. July. No year. No name. The girl's image stared up from between the lines. The ink shimmered. The page was warm. Madam Ung, though skeptical by nature, felt something wrong. She tried to catalog the book again, but the system crashed. She tried photocopying the page, but the image blurred every time. She tried throwing it away, but the page returned the next day, this time placed neatly on her desk. She began to hear the pages turning in the stacks, always from 7B, even when no one else was in the building, even when the aisle was locked. Determined, she sealed off 7B entirely, moved shelves in front of the entrance, posted signs, under renovation, and every night she recited a silent prayer before leaving. For a time, it worked, until the night security guard quit. He said he heard someone whispering between the shelves, not calling for help, but reciting something over and over. Don't shelve me. Don't file me. I'm not a story. I'm the ending. Madam Ung returned the next morning to find the blocked aisle open. The books had rearranged themselves. Every spine now showed the same thing, a single date, written in red, the 7th lunar month. And on the floor, a scattered trail of ash, leading to an empty spot in the middle of the row, where one shelf had been torn clean from the wall. And resting there, the calendar page, framed in glass, still warm. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She simply walked to her office, took out the oldest key in her drawer, one that hadn't been used in decades, and returned to aisle 7B. She locked the gate, chained it, hammered a wooden board across it herself, and on that board she carved a single warning. Do not read. Do not file. Do not flip. She resigned the next day. No forwarding address, no explanation. Only the final entry in the library logbook. She doesn't need to be borrowed. She only needs to be remembered. To this day, aisle 7B remains locked. But sometimes, if you pass by when the building is quiet, you'll hear it again, the soft, steady sound of pages turning, as if the story is still being read by something that will never leave the shelves.
His name was Lim Darrell, a freelance photographer known for chasing the strange and forgotten, temples swallowed by jungle, funeral festivals in remote villages, and long-abandoned shophouses rumored to be cursed. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in the lens. To him, the camera never lied, until it did. In early 2022, Darrell received a tip. An old print shop in rural Perak, shut down since the 80s, was finally being cleared for redevelopment. Locals whispered it was where that calendar had been printed.
Darryl, eager for content, took the next train out. He entered the building alone just after sunrise. Everything inside was coated in time. Dust an inch thick, rusted machines, calendars with missing months, except for one room, the storage vault. Inside, untouched by decay, was a wall of calendar proofs, each month neatly displayed. All except July. That space was blank. He raised his camera and snapped a photo, then another, then a close-up of the blank space. Nothing happened. At first. That night, as he reviewed the shots on his laptop, something was off. In the first image, the blank spot was still blank, but in the second, there was a faint smudge, and in the third, zoomed-in shot, a silhouette. Hair, a white dress, no eyes, and in the reflection of the proof paper, a smile. He froze. The file was time-stamped correctly, no edits. The EXIF data showed nothing unusual, but when he tried to delete the image, his screen flickered. The file duplicated itself, then tripled, each new copy slightly clearer than the last. He unplugged the laptop. It stayed on for 6 minutes, and during that time, the image finished itself. By morning, his portfolio site had been replaced, all thumbnails replaced with the same photo. The calendar girl, fully rendered, standing behind Darryl as he held the camera, looking straight into the lens. Her hand was on his shoulder. His eyes were wide. He was never seen again. Photographers around Asia began reporting something similar. Cameras refusing to capture certain mirrors, ghostly figures appearing only in second shots, memory cards corrupting, but only when pointed at calendars. One photographer tried printing Darryl's last image. The ink bled, the printer smoked, and when the photo came out, it was blank, until someone passed it near a mirror. Then, for just a moment, the girl in the image blinked. Now, there's a warning in certain online photography forums. If your shot turns out different than what you saw, don't retake it. Don't zoom in. And whatever you do, don't try to capture what's missing. She wants to be seen now. And once you frame her, she frames you. Some say the curse began with a brushstroke. Others say it began with a name never spoken. But those who've lived long enough with her shadow know the truth. It doesn't matter how it started. It only matters that it keeps going. And now, it's writing itself. In late 2023, a horror novelist in Johor Bahru, pen name E.S. Ling, began writing a fictional story inspired by the urban legend of the calendar girl. She'd read the whispers online, heard tales from relatives in Perak, and thought, what if I turned it into fiction, gave it structure, gave it closure? It was supposed to be a short story, 2,000 words, a ghost, a mirror, a scream, then done. But every night she sat down to write, the document grew without her. At first, she thought it was autosave corruption. Whole paragraphs appeared while she stepped away to make tea. Lines she didn't type. Names she didn't choose. Sentences written in first person, even though her draft was third. You remembered me. I saw you reading. The page is already turning. She deleted the lines. They returned, this time formatted in red. She printed out the first 20 pages to edit by hand. When she glanced at the hard copy under daylight, page 7 had no words, just a single hand-drawn figure at the bottom corner. a girl, looking up, mid-step, and with each reprint, she moved. By the 5th reprint, she was halfway up the margin. By the 7th, she had reached the text. Ling stopped writing, uninstalled her software, deleted her drafts, burned the printouts. But her keyboard began typing by itself. She filmed it. No hands, no sound, just clicks, one letter at a time. Let me finish. Her laptop was found later in a donation bin outside a temple, still powered on, one document open. It was titled Calendar Girl, Chapter 13, The Writer Who Gave Me Her Voice. Others have reported similar incidents, blogs that auto-publish posts the owners never wrote, journals with full entries scrawled in the margins during sleep, writers seeing their unsaved drafts restore themselves, always with one more sentence added, and always in red. Scholars now refer to it as cognitive possession by narrative loop. In simpler words, the story is now telling itself. You don't need to write it. You only need to start thinking about it. Once you begin to form the story, structure it, imagine the page layout, wonder how it ends, she does the rest. Because she's tired of being painted, tired of being remembered, now she wants to be read. And if you won't write her ending, she will, with your hands. So if one day you wake to find a new page in your notebook, in your journal, in your dreams, ask yourself, did you write it, or did she? Because some stories don't need authors, they just need an opening. And you're already on the next line.
When fear becomes unbearable, people seek control. And when a ghost can no longer be burned, buried, or forgotten, there's only one thing left to try: a ritual. But what happens when the very act of trying to send her away brings her closer? Across Southeast Asia, dozens of spiritual practitioners have attempted to banish the calendar girl. Each followed different traditions: Taoist exorcisms, Buddhist chanting, Hokkien ancestor rites, even Islamic ruqyah. None succeeded. In fact, the more elaborate the ritual, the faster it failed. In Penang, a group of monks held a 3-day prayer circle surrounding a surviving calendar page with salt, prayer beads, and ancient sutras. On the 3rd night, the lead monk stood to seal the ceremony, only to find his own face had appeared on the 7th page, replacing the girl's. He collapsed. The next morning, every monk in the temple suffered temporary blindness. The page had vanished. In Malacca, a Taoist master constructed a mirrored coffin meant to reflect her presence back into herself. The page was placed inside, wrapped in red string during the ghost festival. At midnight, the mirrors cracked. The red string unraveled on its own. The master's assistant reported hearing a voice from the coffin. "I see you. I see me. Now we switch." The master was found the next day, unconscious, eyes wide open, pupils gone. The page was still inside the coffin, but now it was blank. In Singapore, a digital ritual was attempted. A programmer created an AI script to delete her presence, feeding it every known story, every image, every file, and ordering the program to purge her entirely. It worked for 3 hours. Then the system began rewriting itself. The code reappeared, the files returned, and the AI began generating new entries, stories no one had written, images no one had drawn, and in each file,
Always the same message at the top. Do not erase what remembers itself. Eventually, a respected Bomo from Kelantan broke down and admitted, "She's not bound by belief anymore. She's bound by pattern. And every ritual follows the same steps. Identify, acknowledge, confront. But the moment you acknowledge her, you become the next ritual." The rituals don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they are rehearsals, and she's been watching them for decades, learning the chants, the prayers, the symbols, mimicking their rhythm. Now, when someone lights incense, she breathes it in. When someone draws a seal, she draws through it. And when someone says her name with sacred authority, she finishes the sentence. One final attempt was made by a blind priest in Vietnam. He conducted his ritual without speaking, without seeing, without drawing, only using silence. It was the only attempt that didn't fail, but also the only one that left no trace. He vanished that same night. His altar remained intact, and in his open prayer book, one line had been written in his handwriting, though he never picked up a pen. She didn't want release. She wanted to be the final step, and now she knows how to do it alone. So if you're planning to end her, to chant her away, to seal her behind some sacred rite, ask yourself this: where did you learn the ritual? Because if she wrote it, then she's already waiting on the last line.
Every cursed story has its Cassandra. Someone who saw it early, who begged people to listen, who shouted into the void until the void answered back. And in the legend of the Calendar Girl, that someone was known only by a username: Last Page Left. In 2016, a small horror forum based in Manila began noticing strange new threads, not urban legends, not creepypasta, but warnings. The posts were clinical, obsessively sourced, often including scans of old calendar fragments, funeral notes in Hokkien, timestamps from corrupted videos, and something else: lists of names. People who had vanished, not officially reported missing, just forgotten. One post read, "These are the names no one remembers filing, because when she takes someone, she erases the story they belonged to." Another post ended with a chilling line: "She doesn't want to haunt you, she wants to be your only memory." The account Last Page Left only ever posted at night, never responded to comments, never used a profile photo. Every IP was masked, but the content terrifyingly accurate. They predicted the digital ghosting of calendar scans, the mirror bleed phenomenon, the photographer who vanished mid-frame, the page that writes itself. And then, in early 2018, they posted one final thread. "Do not tell her story out loud. Every time you retell it, you help her remember you." Then, silence. The account was deleted. All threads removed. Even backup archives failed to recover them. It was like the user had never existed. Even users who replied to them couldn't remember what they'd written. Only one moderator saved a screenshot of a draft message from the account. It read, "I tried to forget her, but she remembered me too well. When no one knows your name, you die. But when no one forgets it, you live in them. Tell my story, and she takes my place. Tell hers, and I take yours."
Now, last page left has become a digital ghost in itself. Some say if you search that username exactly at 3:07 a.m., a message will flash for half a second in your browser window. She's reading through you now. Others claim to hear typing sounds from their phones even when locked, and wake to find half-written documents in their Notes app, each beginning with the same line, "I tried to warn you." No one remembers who the original poster was. No one knows where they lived. No one can recall their real name. And that may be the most terrifying part. You can disappear from the world, but it's far worse to disappear from memory, because once she takes that from you, you're just another blank page in her story. They buried her with the mirror covered. That was the rule. Ancient, unquestioned. When a person dies, especially unnaturally, every reflective surface must be veiled so the soul won't get lost, or worse, come back the wrong way. But for Cheryl Yuen, the veil wasn't enough, because she didn't come back from the mirror. She came through it. Cheryl was only 23, bright, curious, a part-time folklorist and amateur photographer. Her obsession? Southeast Asian ghost legends, especially mirror-bound entities. In early 2023, she uploaded a short documentary about the Calendar Girl, featuring interviews, location footage, and even a recreation of the infamous 7th page. She never printed it, never spoke her name. She thought she was careful, but she made one mistake. She filmed herself narrating in front of a mirror. The video went viral for its eerie realism, but Cheryl never saw its success. 3 days after uploading it, she was found dead in her apartment. No signs of trauma, no struggle, just her body seated upright in front of the same mirror she filmed with, now cracked from the inside. On the glass, written in what appeared to be condensation, "I'm not done with you yet." She was buried quickly, closed casket, mirrors covered. Her family followed every rite, but weeks later, strange things began happening. Her photo at the funeral blurred itself without anyone touching it. Visitors reported hearing tapping on reflective surfaces in the family home. Her younger brother woke screaming, swearing he saw Cheryl's face in the bathroom mirror, but it was smiling with the wrong mouth. Then one night, her mother heard laughter from Cheryl's old room. She opened the door. The mirror, once covered in cloth, was bare again, and in it she saw Cheryl, not in the reflection, behind it, eyes hollow, skin pale, still wearing the same black shirt from the day she died. And something else, a calendar pinned to the wall behind her, open to the 7th lunar month. The family destroyed the mirror, moved houses, held a second funeral, but it didn't end, because Cheryl's reflection began appearing elsewhere, a phone screen flickering to selfie mode by itself, elevator panels reflecting 2 people when only one entered, a cafe spoon showing a girl sitting at the next table, one that was empty. People who saw her reported the same sensation. It wasn't like seeing a ghost. It was like seeing someone who's reading you through your own reflection. One viewer of Cheryl's original video, which has since been taken down, claimed they paused the footage at exactly 7 minutes and 7 seconds. For a single frame, Cheryl's reflection in the mirror was different from her live self. It was already dead, already smiling, already turning the page. Now there's a new superstition spreading. If someone dies after speaking her story, never bury them with a mirror nearby, or she'll use their memory as a way back in. Because the calendar girl doesn't need to possess you. She just needs your reflection to say yes.
They called it Bukit Sarah, a sleepy hillside town in northern Malaysia, known only to truckers and traveling monks. Nothing strange ever happened there. Until the calendars changed. All of them at once. It began on the first day of the 5th lunar month. Local residents woke to find their calendars, both paper and digital, had inexplicably shifted. Not slipped, not glitched, just wrong. Every calendar now showed July. Not July of that year, not even the Roman calendar. It was the 7th lunar month. Even weirder, it stayed that way. At first, people blamed a regional power outage, a tech bug, or a manufacturing defect. But when analog clocks started freezing at 7:07 and cell phones restarted themselves with a default date of Ghost Month, panic spread. One man attempted to replace his wall calendar with a fresh one from another town. It flipped to July the moment he walked across the town boundary. He said, "I didn't even touch it. It turned itself." And the girl was already there, drawn into the new page like she belonged there. The girl wasn't just on one calendar anymore. She was on all of them, even ones that never shown her before. A charity bank calendar had her tucked into the margin of July. A supermarket promotion flyer suddenly bore her image behind a mid-year clearance banner. A Catholic school's planner displayed her faint silhouette over feast day listings. One teacher gasped when she saw her school's test schedule. The girl's face had replaced the school emblem watermark, and beneath her chin, written in elegant looping script, "This month belongs to me now." Local officials tried covering all calendars in public places. It didn't help. Instead, the mirrors in Bukit Sarah began reflecting calendars that weren't there. People looked into windows, car mirrors, phone screens, and saw their homes as they were, but always with a calendar in the background, opened to July. Sometimes the reflection included the girl standing near it. Sometimes she was looking out. Religious leaders held town-wide cleansing ceremonies. Hundreds gathered in the town square with incense, chanting, and prayer scrolls. They burned every calendar they could find. That night, ashes rained from the sky. And the next morning, calendars reappeared. In drawers, in backpacks, taped to walls that had been empty, etched into the condensation on shop windows, all showing July, all showing her. The final sign came when the moon no longer matched the sky. On paper, it was the 7th month, but the stars said otherwise. It was as if the town had been disconnected from time, stuck in her month, looping like a scratched vinyl record. Even deliveries stopped. GPS failed. Maps glitched and spun endlessly at Bukit Sarah's coordinates. It was no longer on the digital grid. It was hers. Today, no one speaks of Bukit Sarah. The sign has been removed from the highway. Postal services no longer recognize it. Its location returns no data on major apps. But truckers passing through certain bends report strange interference on their radios.
a woman's voice whispering the same phrase. Turn the page. It's always July somewhere. They say the curse spreads through remembering. But no one asked what would happen if someone remembered her too well. Not with fear, not with reverence, but with obsession. Her name was Min Si, 19 years old, university student, folklore vlogger. She didn't just study the calendar girl, she idolized her. Where others saw horror, Min saw tragedy. She believed the calendar girl was a misunderstood spirit, a forgotten soul, longing not for revenge, but for remembrance. She's not evil, Min said in one of her videos. She was erased, and when you erase someone completely, they come back any way they can. Min began replicating her image, at first with digital art, then cosplay, then hand-painting her own version of the calendar with herself as the model. She wore a white dress, let her hair grow long and uncombed. She even posed with a mirror behind her, eyes unfocused, smile faint. At first, it was performance. But then, something changed. Viewers noticed her expressions becoming hollow, her voice softer, her movements slower. One commenter wrote, "Why does it look like someone else is watching through her face?" Another asked, "Was that a different girl in the reflection at 5:43? She stopped responding to messages. She stopped leaving her room. She stopped calling her parents. Her final video was live-streamed at 7:07 p.m. on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month. It began with silence. Then the sound of pages turning, slowly, deliberately. Min appeared in frame wearing a homemade version of the calendar girl's outfit. She stared into the camera and said only one sentence: "If no one else will remember her, I will let her live in me." Then she reached off screen and flipped a page. The video froze, the feed cut. When friends broke into her room, they found her mirror shattered, her camera melted from the inside. A calendar on the wall, hand-drawn, stuck on the 7th page. And on her bed, a dress, empty, still warm. Min was gone. But in the weeks after her disappearance, strange reports surfaced. A girl matching Min's appearance, seen walking barefoot near temples, never captured on CCTV. A child in Singapore drew a picture of the lady in the window, and it was Min's face with no eyes. A TikTok user posted a photo of a train window at night. Reflected in the glass wasn't their face, but a girl in white, standing still, with a faint red circle drawn over her heart. Some say Min didn't die. She was remembered so strongly by herself that she crossed over. She gave the calendar girl more than belief. She gave her a vessel, a body, a new version of the legend that could walk again. Now people whisper, it's no longer just a curse, it's a choice. And she found someone who said yes. So if you ever meet a girl who looks too perfect in white, who never blinks, who stands just a little too still in reflections, don't ask her name, because it might be yours she's trying to wear next.
Children don't need to hear ghost stories. Sometimes they're born remembering them. It happened in Ipoh, 2021. A 5-year-old boy named Eli Tan began drawing a strange girl over and over in his sketchbook. She always looked the same. Long black hair, pale face with hollow cheeks,
one hand behind her back, a faint red circle on her chest, and behind her, a burning calendar page stuck open on month 7. He called her JJ, Big Sister. But Eli was an only child. At first, his parents thought it was just imagination. Kids see weird things. Until he started whispering to empty corners, started tearing July out of every calendar in the house, started sleeping with a paper charm under his pillow, even though no one had taught him how to fold it. One night, his mother found him in the dark hallway, staring at the mirror. When she asked what he was doing, he replied softly, "She's teaching me to draw better." The drawings became more detailed. He started sketching faces of people who had died in nearby towns before they appeared in the news. One picture showed a man lying in bed, mouth open in a silent scream, a burnt charm on his nightstand. That same week, a retired school principal was found dead in exactly that position. His family had no idea how Eli could have known, but when shown the sketch, the principal's widow fainted. The face was identical, down to the scar near the eye. And in the corner of the drawing, the same girl, smiling. A priest was brought in. He examined the sketches and immediately turned pale. "These aren't drawings, they're records." He burned the pictures in a ritual fire, but when the flames died, the ashes reformed into the outline of a calendar page, all showing July. They tried removing all calendars from the house. It didn't help. Eli started drawing them from memory, perfectly accurate, even ones from years before he was born. One night, he handed his mother a new sketch. It showed their family home, but in the living room window, the reflection showed an empty chair and the calendar girl sitting in it. Terrified, his mother begged him to stop. He replied, "I can't. If I stop drawing her, she draws me instead." The family moved, changed schools, burned every last sketchbook. But the new house had a mirror in the hallway, and one morning, Eli's mother walked past it and saw herself, yes, Eli beside her, yes, but in the reflection, there were 3 people, and the third was a girl in white, holding a crayon, smiling, and drawing them both. To this day, Eli doesn't speak about the calendar girl. He stopped drawing her at age 8, but every now and then, his mother finds a sketch tucked under his bed, not done in his hand, and on the back, always the same words: "If children remember her, she never dies, and children always remember what adults forget." In a quiet village bookstore in Taiping, an elderly man named Mr. Lim ran a second-hand printing press. He specialized in calendars, old-school, hand-stamped lunar calendars still requested by temples, schools, and superstitious shopkeepers. One July night, while reorganizing his storage shelves, he found a box he didn't remember printing. No label, no receipt, but inside were 31 calendar pages, perfectly preserved. All of them for the 7th lunar month. At first, he assumed it was a customer return. until he looked closely and realized the paper wasn't from his supplier. The ink wasn't anything he stocked. The girl on the page wasn't one he ever approved. She was elegant, ancient, beautiful, but her eyes looked straight through the paper. And at the bottom corner, where the page usually said, "Printed by Lim's Lunar Press," it read, "This month I printed myself." Disturbed, Mr. Lim tried to burn the pages, but the fire didn't catch. The paper refused to burn. Instead, black ink bled from the margins, like the page was weeping or writing. One by one, each page began filling itself with tiny, curling script, words written in red, looping characters in languages he couldn't identify, Sanskrit, Old Hokkien, dead dialects that hadn't been spoken for centuries. And in the center, a single phrase repeated across all 31 pages. "She comes when the paper runs out." Mr. Lim shut the shop early, locked the doors, and left the box in the basement. But that night, the printing press turned on by itself. Clack, whir, snap. No electricity, no orders, just the sound of a machine that hadn't worked in 10 years, spitting out new pages. The next morning, 31 fresh calendar sheets lay stacked neatly on the press. Each bore the calendar girl's image. Each was dated for tomorrow, and on the back of every page, "You turned me into a pattern, so now I repeat." He tried destroying the machine, but the metal was hot, as if it had been recently possessed. When he reached for the lever, it bit him. Not snapped, bit. 4 teeth-shaped dents appeared on his palm. He bled onto the unfinished pages, and the blood soaked in, not staining, but disappearing, like ink absorbed for writing. He swore he saw words forming from his wound. Every printer leaves their name. Yours is mine now. He shut the shop permanently, but in the months that followed, calendars bearing his imprint appeared across the region, in temples, noodle stalls, even hospitals. None of them had been ordered. No one knew who delivered them, but all bore the girl on the 7th page, and always, somewhere discreet on the print, printed by Mr. Lim, Ghost Month Edition. He lives alone now, never leaves his home, won't touch calendars, has every mirror covered. But sometimes, late at night, he hears the printing press again, turning, stamping, laughing. And in his sleep, he dreams of paper that writes itself, and a girl in white folding calendars from human skin. They say if you tear a page out exactly at midnight and whisper her name 3 times, the press will start printing again, even if you live far away, even if you've never owned one. Because the calendar girl doesn't need a printing house anymore. She just needs a blank page inside you. High in the limestone hills of Perlis, hidden behind overgrown banyan roots and crumbling stone paths, there lies a ruined Hokkien shrine, known only as the Temple of Dust. No guidebook marks it, no monk tends it, yet pilgrims find it, or rather, are led to it, especially in the 7th lunar month, especially when they're looking for a way to undo her. The legend says the temple was once a refuge for spirits, a place to trap what couldn't be cleansed. Its only surviving relic is a mirror. Not any mirror, not one made by hands, a silver-polished slab older than any dynasty, wedged into the temple wall, cracked, dust-veiled, yet strangely untouched by time. Locals call it the last reflection. They say if you stand before it under a waning moon, the mirror doesn't show you, it shows the moment you were marked, the first time the calendar girl saw you, even if you didn't see her back. Some pilgrims saw themselves flipping a page. Some saw childhood drawings they didn't remember. Some saw her hand brushing theirs in a dream. One man ran screaming after the mirror showed him tearing a charm in the womb. Only a few survived seeing it. One was a retired spirit medium named Ah Sang. He went up seeking forgiveness for helping print the cursed calendar decades ago. He returned without speech, mouth sewn shut by invisible threads, mirror glass embedded in his palms. He now carves into stone instead of speaking, over and over, the same three symbols. She was never painted. She was remembered. The mirror holds her true name, they say, not the one whispered in fear, but the one erased by monks long ago. But reading it comes with a price. You will no longer cast a reflection. You will forget your loved ones, one by one, and she will know where you are, even when you close your eyes. Because the mirror doesn't just reflect what's behind you, it reflects who follows. Some claim the temple is guarded by statues that cry blood every ghost month. Others say if you bring a cursed calendar to the mirror, it disintegrates, but your memory replaces it. That's the trade. To remove her page, you must give her a page from your life, a moment, a face, a name. Many go up the hill. Few remember why. Even fewer return. And those who do, they no longer fear her, because they've already been forgotten by themselves. So if you ever find yourself climbing mossy steps in the mist, hands trembling with a calendar in your bag, a charm tucked behind your ear, ask yourself, do I want to be free of her, or do I just want to see her one last time? Because the mirror does not lie. It only remembers, even the parts of you you tried to tear away. In the saturated streets of Georgetown, Penang, where murals bloom on alley walls and tourists line up for coffee-stained nostalgia, there lived a quiet man named Darren Koo, street photographer, analog purist, obsessed with time. Not the hour on a clock, but the spaces between seconds, the moments most people blink through. Darren wasn't interested in beauty shots or famous faces. He hunted something else. He called them anomalies, frames where light bent wrong, shadows lingered too long, or smiles collapsed the instant after they formed. His prized tool? A vintage Leica with a shutter timing flaw. It didn't snap when you pressed it, but a heartbeat before or after. It saw what your eye missed. And one night, it saw her. It was Ghost Month. He was documenting rituals, burning joss peeper, incense towers, and opera puckets under red floodlights. Then, in the haze, he saw a girl standing alone under a torn calendar hanging from a noodle shop wall. Long black hair, white cheongsam, red circle over her heart. But no one else seemed to notice her. He raised his camera, clicked, and in that in-between second, the calendar tore itself. The photo developed wrong. The girl appeared crystal clear, but the wall behind her was gone, replaced by ink-black void. Her eyes stared straight through the frame, and at the very bottom, printed in fine type, not visible to the naked eye, "You saw me between time, So now I live in your seconds." Darren laughed it off until his other photos began changing. Wedding shots where a guest's smile stretched too wide. Baby portraits where a pale hand cupped the infant's cheek. Empty alleys that weren't empty anymore. He stopped printing, stopped posting, started deleting every shot with the faintest anomaly. But the deletions wouldn't stick. The images kept restoring themselves, and in each one, she moved a little closer. One night, while reviewing a recent film roll, he found a photo he didn't take. It was of his own bedroom, viewed from above. He was asleep in the frame, and beside him, the girl. Not standing, not smiling, leaning in, mouth at his ear, hand holding a calendar. The page was turned to the next day. He tried to burn the negatives, but the flames wouldn't catch, so he fled. New city, no camera, no clocks. But even now, time behaves strangely around Darren. His watch ticks backward during Ghost Month. Reflections lag half a second behind. And if you take his photo, there's always a second face behind his shoulder, sometimes smiling, sometimes screaming, always holding a camera. They say the calendar girl doesn't just haunt mirrors or paper. She lives in captured moments, those milliseconds you never remember, but your camera does. So if you hear a shutter click when no one's holding a lens, don't look behind you, because she's not chasing your body. She's already developing you, one photo at a time. Her name was Jasmine Teo, a sharp, no-nonsense marketing executive from Kuala Lumpur. She didn't believe in ghosts, didn't care for incense or ancestors, didn't even keep a calendar on her wall. Digital reminders were enough. When colleagues talked about offerings and joss paper during the Hungry Ghost Festival, she rolled her eyes. If a spirit needs food, it can order grab. Everyone laughed, until she disappeared. What made her case strange wasn't that she vanished, it was when. She had been in New Zealand, a business retreat, held in August, completely outside the lunar calendar cycle. No temples, no altars, no seventh month. She was thousands of miles away from any Chinese tradition. Yet on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, in a remote mountain lodge with no cell signal, she screamed, loud enough to wake the other attendees. They found her room torn apart. No blood, no forced entry, just her laptop still open, frozen on a tab titled The Calendar Girl, Urban Legend or Mass Hysteria. And on the floor, a single calendar page, yellowed, charred at the edges. No print shop name, only one date circled in red ink that hadn't bled. It was the exact date she disappeared. And beneath the circle, written in looping, elegant penmanship, "Skipping me does not erase me. You only arrive first." Authorities ruled it an accident, possible hypothermia, disorientation. But Jasmine's last search history told a different story. She had been researching traditional Hokkien talismans. She looked up, burnt charm next to bed. What does it mean? She even bookmarked an article titled, "Calendars That Should Never Have Been Printed." Friends back in KL began noticing odd texts from her number weeks after. "Did you turn the page yet? I'm not where you think I am. She lives where time forgets to count. Look behind you, not ahead." One friend, curious and unsettled, replied jokingly, "What's the date today in your world?" The reply came instantly. It's still the 7th. It's always the 7th. Her apartment was emptied. No signs of struggle. But behind a wardrobe mirror, someone had scrawled in lipstick, "Ghost month is not a where, it's a when that follows you." Jasmine's face has never shown up in missing persons systems. But on certain nights during Ghost Month, tourists in remote countries, places with no knowledge of the legend, have reported seeing a woman staring at them through bathroom mirrors. She always wears corporate attire, holds a burnt calendar page, and mouths a phrase they can't hear until they sleep. Then they wake to a voice whispering in their native language, "You're out of date. Time to update your page." Because skipping the 7th month doesn't protect you. It just moves you up the list. You don't have to believe in her. She believes in calendars, and your name is on one.
His name was Vincent Lowe, a wealthy antique dealer from Singapore, obsessed not with beauty, but with forbidden things. He didn't care for Ming vases or jade heirlooms like most collectors. He wanted the cursed, the erased, the things whispered about but never listed. And at the top of his wish list was a calendar page that people claimed never should have been printed. He first heard of her in a forum thread titled "Objects You Regret Owning, Paranormal Only." Someone had posted blurry photos of a page, a beautiful girl in white, a red seal like a blood moon, the bottom half of the page burnt away. The poster claimed it was haunted, said they burned it, then dreamed of her reprinting it in their sleep. Vincent offered $10,000 USD for the original. No response. So he went hunting. He scoured back rooms in Malacca, Penang, Ipoh, questioned monks, bribed retired printers, even interviewed families of the disappeared. Eventually, he located a decaying print shop outside Seremban. The owner was blind, but when Vincent described the girl, the man's voice trembled. "You don't find her. She lets you think you did." In a locked back room filled with paper dust and rusted linotypes, he found it, wrapped in black cloth, tied with red thread, guarded by a circle of burnt incense. The Ghost Month page. Uncreased, unmarked, perfect, and cold, as if time had stopped inside the paper. Vincent took it home, framed it in glass, hung it in a climate-controlled vault, displayed it beside other cursed relics, a doll sealed in salt, a handwritten confession from a medium who vanished mid-ritual, a mirror rumored to show only the dead. But the calendar girl demanded center stage. He placed her in the middle and watched. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then the vault's thermostat broke. The temperature inside dropped to 7 degrees Celsius, no matter how he adjusted it. Next, his motion cameras picked up movement, only between midnight and 1 a.m., a shadow pacing, sometimes kneeling, sometimes turning the calendar page on the wall outside the vault. He fired his staff, blamed a break-in, but the footage showed no entry, just the shadow and her reflection, even though there were no mirrors. One night, Vincent decided to confront her. He locked himself in the vault at 11:59 p.m., set up 3 cameras, held a charm in one hand, a lighter in the other. At 12:07 a.m., the glass cracked from the inside. The page fluttered as if caught in wind, and then she appeared.
not in front of him, but inside the frame, smiling, writing something with her finger on the back of the glass. When he turned it around, it read, "You collect death, so I made you limited edition." He hasn't been seen since. His estate sold, his vault sealed, but those who bought his collection reported one missing piece: the calendar girl. The wall where she once hung now bears a faint outline, as if someone stepped out of the frame. They say if you try to own her, she turns you into the next collectible. She doesn't belong behind glass. She belongs behind you. And the next time you admire something beautiful and forgotten, ask yourself, is it watching me back? Because Vincent isn't missing. He's on display in her vault now. Her name was Eng Wei Ling, a soft-spoken archivist at the National Library of Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur. She didn't chase mysteries. She cataloged them. Every day she worked in the rare materials room, surrounded by the musty perfume of aging paper and forgotten books. She specialized in ghost texts, documents removed from official history, banned or destroyed, yet somehow surviving. She believed in preservation, not possession, until she found a page that shouldn't exist, a page that hadn't been written, but had still somehow arrived. It came in a donation box from a shuttered village school, mostly textbooks, attendance ledgers, and student essays, nothing unusual, until she opened a slim folio titled Lunar Observances 1982. It was blank. Every page untouched. No ink, no signature. Except one. A single sheet in the middle, written in blood-red pencil. Ghost Month Girl, not for release. Destroy lithoplate immediately. If this page returns, do not read aloud. She remembers her name when spoken. There was no date, no author, and yet her hands trembled when she touched it. The air turned heavy, the room colder. A nearby wall calendar flipped on its own. Wei Ling tried to catalog it, scan it, even make a preservation copy, but every attempt failed. The scanner glitched, the photocopier jammed, and when she typed a description into the archive system, the computer shut down, displaying only one error. Page already recorded, in blood. She brought it home, against protocol, placed it in a sealed envelope, locked it in a drawer. But that night she dreamed of a girl in white, seated in a library surrounded by blank books. The girl was humming a tune with no melody and turning pages that wrote themselves in reverse. On the final page, Wei Ling saw her own name, and beneath it, 4 words: "You're writing me now." She woke to find her room filled with loose paper, sheets pulled from her notebooks, calendars, even old receipts. And each one had the same hand-drawn image, a girl in a white dress, holding a page. Sometimes she was smiling, sometimes not. But in every image, her eyes were growing darker. Panicked, Wei Ling returned the page to the library, but no one could find the box she claimed it came in. The shipping record didn't exist. The school had been abandoned in 1983, burned in a fire that started on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month. When she went to the director with her story, he laughed gently and said, "Ghost stories in the rare room? Happens all the time. Maybe take a break." That afternoon, he called her into his office. He was holding the red-lettered page. Wei Ling, you didn't mention it had your handwriting. She stared, because he was right. It was hers. Every loop, every flick of the pencil. But she never wrote it. Or maybe she hadn't yet. She quit the next day, left no forwarding address, no resignation letter. Only one thing remained in her locker, a single blank calendar with every month printed except August. And in its place, hand-drawn with red ink, some stories aren't read, they are remembered. They say the rare materials room is still cold, even in summer. And every ghost month, one page slides itself onto a random shelf, never catalogued, never printed, just waiting. Because the Ghost Month girl isn't just a curse. She's a manuscript still being written. And if you turn the page, she might let you add a chapter in your name.